and it worked.
Okay, fine.
That's right. Oh, okay. That's all right. I should learn how to use it.
We ready, Jeff? Okay, let's call the meeting to order.
Yeah, Mac,
Here.
House,
Here.
Dyke, Freund,
Here.
Berglund,
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Agenda item, the district mission vision by Director Wright.
Okay. Our mission, regardless of who you are, what your story is, you can learn and be loved here. Our vision is creating compassionate, confident problem solvers. Our operating principles are information for one is information for all, no surprises, verify facts, think ahead, disagree and explain your thinking, and then commit.
Agenda item number 3, approval of the agenda. Do we have any edits, changes, or corrections?
We have one change. We had a conflict with some students' speech and drama presentation, so we're going to move that to the next meeting. So we're going to take. That's it.
Okay. We have a motion.
What about the report? Politics, is that a change? It says no.
That should be a yes. We did the report. That's correct.
So.
Facilities committee just have a
That's
report.
number 5.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, Scott.
Okay, any other changes?
Approve the agenda as amended.
Motion and second to approve the agenda as amended. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those. Aye. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 4, comments by board members and superintendent.
First round, strategic focus area and goal of student engagement. One of the big pieces we're really working on, and the community more out with what we're doing with pathways. And pathways are not just a high school piece, they are a K-12 piece, and you're going to see more discussions on how we're partnering with our local business community, getting more of our students actually out in the community. And this was something we really had planned on rolling. Of course, the pandemic has slowed some of that down, but had some great presentations, and we're going to show the community also a strategic plan, how that's leading into that. For example, had a wonderful presentation by our leadership class at the middle school talking about character education they're doing with 7 habits and leadership at the Rotary today. And that's a piece, for example, to build those character pieces before we obviously place students in real career internships and cooperative learning. So that's exciting. Also in engagement, we are working heavily in professional learning community, and we realize that collaboration at the adult level is so important to the success at the student level. And we actually are engaging in a consultant right now. It's actually doing work on building high teams. He's actually not a education person per se, but he has vast experience working with dynamic groups of people, building high chemistry and cohesion so they can achieve at high levels. And we know that starts with adults. And strategic focus area number 2 of equity, we continue to help our staff get through empathy training, and that's been we had empathy training today, which has been very successful in terms of a lot of great feedback of just better understanding and putting ourselves in other people's shoes, the differences that we may share or may have, and that's just been positive all the way through. Strategic focus area of healthy culture. To have robust systems of span of care. And our executive director of mission, Joe Taylor, was out last week and just really pulling people, checking with people on how they feel healthy and their span of care. Leaders checking with them. We want to make sure in our family nobody gets left behind. And also in the future, as we get towards the end of the quarter, we're working on a strategic plan of rolling out more. We'll have student and we have staff culture surveys, but we're going to be rolling out student and parent culture surveys at the end of this quarter, which is at the end of the month. So that's part of a strategic plan as well. And finally, strategic focus area number 4, which is leadership. And again, I really just want to highlight we have this leadership class that every middle schooler at the middle school 5 through 8 gets 7 weeks of leadership with Eric Hofer, and that is in conjunction with the work that we're doing at the pre-K 4 level of Leader of Me, on top of all the stuff that we're doing with advisory with leadership at high school level. So as part of our strategic area, we realize character education is not something that's accidental. We have to be intentional about it, and so we're excited that's been a big part of what we're doing. So that is the update of the 4 strategic focus areas.
Thank you. Board members.
To add to that, I went to the Rotary lunch today for a different presentation that my daughter was a part of, but I got to hear Mr. Booker, two of his students, present about the leadership class, and they kind of went through a typical morning and how they start off their day with the, I think it's the thought of the day or the question of the day. I can't remember how he words it, but
Just
then
Kermit the Frog today.
yeah, Kermit the Frog
That's great.
today. But it was a nice presentation to see from those students, so.
That's great.
I was able to catch the GMA with Mario. Ended up being about 1:45, 10:45. Anyway, that was great. Great publicity for our community.
Any other comments from board members? All right, moving on to agenda number 5, committee reports, facilities. Director Guy, are you on? Can you hear us?
I am barely. We had a meeting on Friday morning for facilities, and primarily we talked about what's on the agenda tonight with the HVAC and stuff. The roof for 500 North Grand, the 1970 edition. Sorry, the roof, and that's on the agenda. And then we discussed, and Jerry went over some other things that they've been working on. Lincoln Playground is completed. Most of the cement work is done. The fence is complete around Comet Field, including the new property and the Armory property. The fence is installed at the college grounds. They were able and have been able to move the propane tank up to the transportation center. Central services offices are progressing. The goal is to be completed by October 15th and potentially move in shortly thereafter. They're installing new doors at the main entrance of Washington. And on the weight room update, the equipment has started to show up. There have been a lot of delays in getting that HVAC items because, well, everything's being delayed worldwide now. And hopefully they will be starting that project in the next 2 to 3 weeks that we approved for Jerry to put in the HVAC into the old wrestling room, which is now going to become our new weight room. So hopefully, in a few weeks, that project can get started. Anything I missed, Janice?
I think you did it.
Great, thank you. And then we had a finance meeting, and we're going to talk about a couple of those items today, which is subpay, as well as we have an audit coming up with the district. And so if you should have gotten your questionnaire from the auditors. So if you have not filled those out, please fill them out so they can have them when they do their audit. That was pretty much it. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 6. Welcome visitors for public comment. So I'm just going to read a argument about public comment, and then we'll open up the floor for anybody who wants to make public comment tonight. To begin our agenda tonight, let me explain our process for public comment. On behalf of the board members, I invite any member of the audience to approach the microphone with comments about items of interest or concern. Please begin by stating your name and contact information. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes so we keep the meeting moving in a timely fashion and allow others an opportunity to speak, as well as allowing the board to complete the agenda in a timely manner. Comments from the public are not limited to items or topics on tonight's agenda, but they are limited to matters within the board's authority. Please understand that we as a board cannot discuss items not already on the agenda. Iowa's sunshine law prohibits us from having a discussion without the proper notice to all of the school district committee that the issue would be discussed at tonight's board meeting. Also, please remember you are making comments in a public meeting. Should you make comments that are the subject of the comment considers to be inflammatory or libelous, you as an individual may be subject to legal action brought by the subject of your comments. Thank you for the support of our school district. So now, if anybody wants to make public comment.
We had nobody sign up to give public comments.
Okay. Nobody wants to make public comment, then we'll move on to agenda item number 7. The health mitigation response plan.
So for the board's consideration, and I think we all kind of know the story behind it, we had a state law that prohibited us from having any sort of mask mandates and face covering mandates. And that was obviously rescinded by federal judge order by Judge Pratt, Southern District of Iowa. And there's a lot of legal considerations with that. That'll probably likely be considered by the 8th Court of Appeals, but we don't know the timeline right now. Actually just got notice today on my phone today that the judge issued another 14-day extension of that stay. So when that happened, we have always taken pride and we want to be wise and reasonable. So we've taken our time. Like, how do we handle this? How do we manage this? What does this mean for us? And I'm really proud of our leadership and our organization. We took a breath to figure that out. Luckily, our numbers have been pretty low with COVID cases right now. So we had a little bit of time to be able to work through that. So we have consulted with a variety of experts. I have worked with 3 different groups of health experts, including physicians in this town, our own nursing staff, and 2 different county health directors. We've consulted with multiple pieces of our legal counsel. We have consulted with our senior leadership team multiple times. We've consulted with a group of 10 teachers picked from a variety of our campuses and paraeducators as well. And I've consulted with about every superintendent in the area, including our conference superintendents, neighboring superintendents, and taking that. Of course, we've been watching the news very adamantly too to find out what's going on in the state. One of the pieces that came to me from one of my mentors early on as I sought wise counsel on this for the board is that it doesn't have to be an either or proposition. It's not one or the other. We could do both. We could continue to honor people in our community that feel that that the face coverings is a choice, but we could also respond to the issue of if we do have an outbreak, because we know research would show that the masks and the face coverings can mitigate an outbreak, very well. And so that's the plan that's in front of you tonight, is a plan that has a matrix in place that would show we would use face coverings in a targeted strategy. We would only use them for 10 days at a time if we hit some of those markers, and we'd only extend them 10 days if we didn't come below those markers. I think it really, what we have done consistently as an organization, we've used a matrix. We haven't, just basically on emotion or just our thoughts and feelings with science. And we've also made it predictable for our students in our community to know when that is. And so part of the piece is we continue to have a dashboard. There would be 2 pieces that would put us to a place where we might use face coverings, and that would be positive cases in an elementary classroom pre-K4. It would be possibly a grade level, more the 5th, 6th grade level or the elementary, and it could be obviously an entire campus. The metrics we're looking at is if we had 5% of the student body would be positive COVID. We're optimistic that won't happen, but there was a time last year it did in high school. We had about 30 cases at its worst in the fall. We're also monitoring the attendance rate. And so this is all conjunction with public health. I work heavily with Floyd County Public Health, and they very supported this plan and gave us feedback on how to do it. They also said some of the metrics and numbers we've set. 10% is a benchmark set by the Iowa Department of Public Health. So they recommended we stay around that for the attendance rate. And what we've done is a 3-day rolling average. So it'd have to be a 3-day rolling average of 10% or greater before we would consider a 10% or a 10-day face covering piece for, again, a targeted classroom, a targeted, campus. And then also 5% is a positive rate was given as Iowa Department of Public Health guidance last year, was given to us by IDPH on how to govern hybrid selection or if we need to go remote learning. So we felt 5 and 10 were both numbers that had been given to us by the state, and Floyd County Public Health agreed. They actually ran some of these numbers for a board as well and had a consensus. They didn't use our name, but said an entity is thinking about this, and the board felt that was the wise thing to do. Again, we know this is a very, very heartfelt debate. There's a lot of people very passionate about this. I think when we find good, wise, reasonable things, it's kind of like this. Nobody loves it, but everybody can live with it. We're trying to get consensus. And what here's my key message to the community and the board. We're only going to use face coverings if we have to choose between that or close schools. Because if we got to a situation where we felt like we'd have to close schools because we were running out of staff, and there's a school district in Western Iowa that's facing that right now. They've had about 30 staff cases, and they're very close to having to cancel school. The thing is, there's no provision for us to have that forgiven now. We would have to make those days up in the summer. So, and I want to remind the community, we got very close last year to having to shut the school down. We ran out of lunch staff. We had volunteers, credit St. John's Church and Bridge Church. They helped serve lunch, but we kept everything we did to keep the school open. And I know us want to see hybrid or a shutdown. So that's where we're saying if we had to face between a shutdown or because of a major outbreak or using masks for a limited time, we feel like that'd be a wise decision to do. You also notice a change in the busing policy. This is by federal order. We are under order from the Iowa Department of Education. In fact, some schools have started to get some letters from the DE saying they need to fix this. So a little context there, there's a federal regulation from the Department of Transportation that public transportation has to mask or face cover on public transportation. That's why you have to wear it on airplanes right now. That federal is a regulation, but we had a state law that said we couldn't have a mask mandate. So we had to balance that. We worked with multiple lawyers, 3 different legal counsels that out. And what it came down to was, while there's a federal regulation, normally federal trumps state, it was a law versus a regulation. So we went with the state law. The state law has now been for the time being. So it's been very clear from the DE, what we're hearing from, we need to follow that. And what all we're going to do is we're going, as students come on, if they don't have a face bus or school transportation, our drivers will just simply hand them a disposable face covering as they come on to make that easy. But we want to be in compliance with the law. Again, this is a very challenging thing that we've tried to put together, but again, we're trying to do something that, and I define consensus as this: we may not love it, but at least we won't stand in the way, that we can all live with it. So I would entertain any questions the board has, and ultimately it would be your final approval to put this in effect. My recommendation is, upon your approval, we put it into effect beginning tomorrow.
Mike, I just have a couple of questions. So when we look at the matrix and it says, like, for example, the 5 to 8 or 9 to 12 campus, it says 5% or more of the student body. When we're saying student body, we mean more as 5% or more positive cases in the 5th grade, for example. That would be is that what we're talking about when we're saying group?
When we're saying a group, at the elementary, this is where it gets a little challenging. At the elementary, they're in self-contained classrooms.
Right.
So it's easy if we had like 3 positive cases in an elementary classroom. And then this has happened in a neighboring school district. They had 6 positive cases. Public health department ordered that classroom home. So this is why we would use that, so we don't have to order kids home by public health order. And it's easier at the elementary level because we could kind of keep them in school, but keep them, masked and face coverings and keep them contained. It gets harder at the high school because they intermingle so much in the middle school, and 7 and 8 does. There is a chance if we had an outbreak in 5th and 6th, we could maybe locate that and isolate that. We haven't quite figured out. I've been working with Joe Taylor on what that could look like. We're continuing plans on that if that were to happen. But they do intermingle and mix, some of the classes in 5, 6, that'd be the only place. It could happen, like at 4th grade because they're self-contained, but likely it wouldn't be a whole 4th grade, it'd just be class by class by class. But if there was an outbreak, you could see maybe the entire 4th grade if they all had outbreaks. But otherwise, what we're looking at, the number of positive cases, we based it on our student enrollment here. And of course, the innovative campus is on there as well. And we made 5%. I rounded, obviously, based on that. Now, one thing I will tell you is we did not include the staff population in the number that we have. So 537 for the high school does not include staff. We would include staff positive cases in our case count. However, I think that we've only had 1 positive staff case. So that's been very rare. So that's why we didn't really want to muddy the numbers much more. A question we may have is, we have some students that are doing flex campus and different things. They're at high school, Carrier Lane, and they come into the high school. We counted them basically in both places because they're both places, we want to be. So some of the innovative campus kids are in the high school, but that's where we came up with the numbers for the positivity. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I just know we kind of talked about our 5th and 6th maybe might be a little bit different just because of the fact that they are more contained.
They're kind of like elementary sometimes, they're
Right.
kind of like middle school. And what we've just left the flexibility that we discussed as a board, if that ever happened, what we need to do, or if there'd be a group, and maybe we had to keep self-contained for a small period of time.
Okay.
Again, our whole goal here is to keep kids in school and keep our campuses open.
Good question. Other questions?
So the staff will be considered part of the percentage? Is that what you said?
That they would be counted as a positive case.
Okay.
Yes, they would be counted as a positive case. So 27 is a 5% of 537. It's actually 26 and a fraction. But we would count if we had a positive staff case in that towards that 27.
Does staff include all, is it just the teachers or is it?
It would
custodians?
include all staff aside of that campus. The one only area gets a little sticky for us, we do have some traveling staff at the elementary, so we just have to figure that out. But most of them have a home base, so we'll work through it. Again, optimistic, fingers crossed, hopefully it's not a huge issue.
Okay, and
Go ahead.
And we'd be talking about illness, absence, right? Rather than
Yes.
attendance.
So this is, and we have this now on our dashboard. I believe we have that active now, so you can see that it is illness absence. It is not absence for college visits, vacations, orthodontist, dentist. It is absolutely that the parents have called in and said this child is sick. And so it's going to include all illnesses, but here's kind of the safeguard. And I can speak from personal experience. I had to experience the norovirus on Sunday, and that's really not a lot of fun, but you only miss a day of school on that. And that's why we're doing the 3-day rolling average. If we had a norovirus outbreak, that's not going to be reflected in a, likely in a 3-day rolling average, because kids are going to, kind of cycle in and out. But if we have a COVID outbreak, they're obviously, kids are going to be out of school for 7-10 days longer. So that'd be reflected in that. But one of the pieces is there's some confidentiality issues of like really identifying, kids with COVID and do it based on that. So there's some information flow issues as well from Floyd County Public Health. They're not getting the data on testing as timely as possible. And to be honest, we've gotten feedback from our community. There's many people that aren't being tested for COVID. They're just getting identified by the doctors just with symptoms. And so that's why we're asking and begging our parents to continue to be honest and open with us. If you have a case, it's confidential, only our health staff and our secretaries know, but that way we can kind of keep an idea of what accurate counts are. And fingers crossed, those counts have continued to be low. Floyd County Public Health has told us they believe at times we probably have some of the most accurate counts for school age because we're hearing the information firsthand. Her information from the state testing labs is about 2 weeks behind right now.
I don't see that the dashboard is up.
Okay, we are working on that. This was a change. Last year, we didn't have that capability in Power School. It was only just kids were absent. But this summer, we fixed that, and Credit Abel Hansen did a lot of work on this, our technology director, to make sure that we actually have a coding for illness. So again, that will just be students are identified as ill.
Well, I'm going to say, obviously, just be no surprise to anybody that I would probably have a full mask mandate if I had my 5-year-old, but I don't. So I'm compromising and going along with this. And I just had surgery, so that I'm trying not to get sick. So I just want you to know that. I think it's a compromise. I do think that 10% is a little high. And the reason that I think that it's high is because that's the point where we have to report to public health, and that's at the point where they can shut us down if we have the flu at 10% or whatever it is that we have at 10%. I've read in a paper where Mason City had 7%. Seems like a more reasonable number to me because we could stop it before it gets out of control. I also saw Waterloo and Cedar Falls, but with 3%, which I think is a little low. I mean, a little low percentage, a bit much. So I just want to throw that out there that 10% is too high, I think 3% is too low. So I don't know, somewhere in between would be better for me.
I have a couple of questions for you, Mike. So when we look at positive cases in the county, do they have any effect on this dashboard at all?
I'd have to defer our positive case, county positivity rate, Justin. We have that.
We are, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we are just having that on right now. And the reason we have that on for reference is there can be an outbreak at a residential facility or a nursing home, but that doesn't mean that it might impact us. So that, again, I've talked to public health and they like this. That's why, using the data that is most reflective of what's happening with us, which is going to be our positive case count, and is going to be our attendance rate. But we do have that on there for reference. But this is where the disconnected data, gets. I was talking with public health today, and the numbers they had had no school age positives that they'd gotten from the labs in Ankeny. But we had parents reporting to us that we had positive school age pieces. So that's where Gail had said, well, at times you're going to know quicker than we will, because by the time it cycles back to her. So that's why, interestingly enough, sometimes we think this is how the school goes. Some of our staff have some of the most relevant, up-to-date information, which again, we're very thankful for parents being open and candid and transparent with us.
Well, and there's a lot more over-the-counter testing that can happen too if you choose to do that.
Yes.
I mean, my husband had it a few weeks ago and we did over the counter and,
But then it's not counted, right?
well, I called public health and told
You
them, but,
reported.
you know, I don't know what they did with it after I called them.
And that's what public health is saying too. They know there's quite a few that are probably not being reported from that home test. We've actually talked with public health too. They have at-home tests they distribute. We've actually asked, could we be distributing? Parents needed one, they could stop at our office and pick one up. And we haven't gotten back from them on that, but that can be something that's available too. But she did say, Gail said that is a challenge that they're having is there's many people being diagnosed based on symptoms. There's people being diagnosed based on at-home tests. And so again, a lot of times the on-server parents is the most accurate.
Mike, just a question on the, since Pat brought up on the 10%. Where did the 10% come from? What's the, Pat mentioned like Mason City, Cedar Falls, Waterloo. What are other districts doing? Just
Yep.
kinda-
So as I public health and I work with our nurses, we try to pick numbers, that people could say they were based in science or based on what the government was telling us, based on what Iowa Department of Public Health was using. Obviously, 10% is the big number because that's what we use on reporting out. And then again, we use that 5% because that comes from the guidance from Iowa Department of Public Health last fall. When we were doing with the hybrid and everything as well. So we all agreed those were numbers that had been given to us by medical professionals and that we could, trust those. At the end of the day, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, so I didn't feel like I should, just pick and choose what those numbers would be. So my best recommendation board is the numbers that are being recommended to me by the public health officials. But again, it's a prerogative of the board of what that could be. I did call the Mason City superintendent. I said, how did you come up with 7%? He was really candid with me, and this is all public record because it happened at the board table. One board member wanted 10, one board member wanted 5. So they ended up with 7. And I get that thinking at the board table, but for me as being someone to be a resource and give you the best information possible, if I just pick 7, because I think that's a good number, somebody could say, why don't you pick 8 or 4 or 5? And so again, it's the board's prerogative and what they want to do with that. However, the people I've talked to, the experts I've talked to have said that, 10% is a number you will find in the Iowa Department of Public Health's recommendations.
Okay, but at 10%, if it's a flu breakout, aren't you supposed to close your school?
It's
That's that's the way it was when I was.
it's not necessarily have to close the school. It's you need to be in consultation with the Iowa Department of Public Health on next steps. And it's interesting. A lot of that's really obscure language that has come to the forefront again recently, obviously with everything with COVID. At 10%, we do report out our numbers and we're just in consultation. And that's where we were talking with public health last week. Our nurses were as well on what's going on. Washington specifically had a 10% spike for a day or two. And it was clearly, it was the norovirus what we were dealing with there at that time. But yes, we were having those conversations. But typically, we're not going to hear a school shutdown, obviously, unless it's something very, very contagious. Obviously, COVID, swine flu happened in Marshalltown, which caused a shutdown there back in like 2009. When Roosevelt several years ago had food poisoning from catering, lost their staff. So they've been rare.
I guess that was my point, was to remediate getting to the crisis point.
Yeah.
Because I think 10% is more of a crisis number than something a little bit lower.
And I'll say, Pat, I don't disagree with your thinking at all. Just as the superintendent recommendation, I wanted to go with something that somebody asked, hey, why'd you pick that number? I wanted to be able to why, as opposed to, I don't know, it seemed like the right number. This was my reasoning.
When you have to report that to the Iowa Department of Public Health, and if they were to say, for whatever reason, flu, COVID, swine flu, and they said the school's going to shut down, are those days forgiven? Or are those days tacked on the end of the school?
No, that we would have to make those up.
Okay. So if we shut down for any reason, we have to make those days up.
Now we have days built in for snow days, so it's just like a snow day. And again, we're not doing online learning days because our research has shown those just aren't effective and don't work. So we have 3 days built in. We have some extra hours built in as well. But yeah, if we had an extensive shutdown, we would have to do that. So that's why we don't want to shut down. And I will tell you, while that's written into some Iowa code about there could be a shutdown, it is very much a conversation with public health and with the school leadership on doing that. And Gail and I talk regularly about these things. For example, when we hit 10% last week with norovirus, it wasn't an issue where we felt like it was going to be a shutdown. What gets us to shut down the quickest though is honestly running out of staff. we're going to talk about tonight with sub shortage to mitigate that. That's what I get worried about. Now, a good portion of our staff vaccinated, which it's a positive thing. So we're hoping those breakthrough infections are rare. But again, there's superintendent Western Iowa. You can read in the news. I mean, they've had a couple of days. They're about a small 3A, been very close to having to shut down because they cannot seem to get it under control with staff.
This may be a little bit of a pivot, but we talked about having a vaccination opportunity here for our students. Is that going to happen?
We have talked to public health, and they've told us to talk to our 2 local pharmacies, and we've been in touch with them that when the ages 5 through 12 vaccine is available, that we would be willing to host a vaccine site. It is Pfizer that's likely going to be approved, so it takes that really low refrigeration temp. But we've been talking with the pharmacies to make that available to kids and parents as they want to. We continue to have some vaccine clinics for adults. Hasn't been a huge response. We've had, I think, 2 of those. Well, 2 of them we scheduled. One had 6 people show up, and the other one had like 4 or 5 sign up. So we just actually redirected them to go to the pharmacy. But we continue to try to offer those opportunities.
Because as I've thought about this, I'm thinking that whatever we decide on tonight, that it would be something that we could revisit like 6 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever after the vaccine became available also, because once that vaccine becomes available, then it truly is a parent choice whether they have that vaccine or not. And not our, well, it is still, still feel like it's our responsibility to keep kids safe, but that's, really we're not shooting people in the arm with vaccines, just.
And that, Pat, that would be my recommendation. Once the vaccine becomes available to ages 5 through 12, that we would sunset out this entire face covering targeted strategy, even that we wouldn't need it. Because that was the question. Well, is this just for COVID or just for all illnesses? No, this is just for COVID. And my recommendation would be, yes, like 4 to 6 weeks after that vaccine is offered to students, we can start to phase this out. That's what Decorah did. Decorah had put a limited face covering strategy in place. I think they have it, basically K through 6 or something. And they said that's, going to expire 4 weeks after the child's vaccine comes out. So that'd be my recommendation, something similar.
How do they know those kids are going to get vaccinated?
They don't. I can't speak to that, but I just know I talked to the Decorah superintendent at a meeting this weekend because we've been asking, what they're doing, and he just said that's what their board decided.
See some results, I guess.
Yeah.
Scott, what are you thinking?
I'm in agreement with Pat. The 10% is a little high for me. When you look at the matrices that were put into place last year, we had mass mandates, we had hybrid learning, we had 200 plus students doing online learning. We shut our football program down for a couple of weeks due to outbreaks. People were getting tested and test results were coming back quickly. I mean, if I think back to my high school chemistry classes and the variables involved in mixing chemicals together and seeing what the end result color is, or if I didn't take home economics or food and nutrition, but if my grandmother was an excellent cook, and if you think about putting ingredients together to bake a cake or bread, if you shortchange one ingredient or you increase another or completely forget one, that bread's not going to rise and it's not going to taste very good. And I think that all of those things fall into play with now that we have so many variables in play now that weren't in play then, that the 10% is high to me. I kind of like the 7% that Mason City did, based upon all those reasons I just said. And I agree with Pat that waiting till you get to a 10% is just too high, in my opinion. Otherwise, I like everything you've come up with. That's the only thing I would change.
Like if we approve this tonight and move forward with it, how would it be implemented in the sense of when would an action be taken on one of these? Or how would it?
We have a whole team of people that monitor this. It includes me, Paige Ellsburn, my assistant. We have our health staff, both of us, which is a huge plus. We traditionally had one nurse, and now 2 nurses, which is awesome, and they're doing great work for me and Jessica. They're monitoring this. I get data every morning that we pull and look at that. And with a 3-day rolling average, which is nice, you would be able to, we'll be able to see this. It's not going to be a surprise. We're going to be able to forecast that and see what that is. We are keeping very close. Both elementary secretaries are in strict orders to monitor. So I don't get, I just get like numbers by campus. So, but they're in strict orders too. If they start to see 2 in one classroom, they're supposed to let me know immediately, so we can keep it on that classroom and do that. So we would have that. If for some reason pre-K4 classroom, we had to do that as well, we would hand call every parent to let them know what's going on in that case as well. So we monitor every day. It would take an emergency board meeting because the board in this piece ability to enforce this. So if we saw this happen, we would call an emergency board meeting together, and you guys would have to make a determination if we're going to enforce the pieces in here. After that, then I would have the authority. It'd be for 10 days. And then as soon as the numbers come back down, we would rescind the targeted strategy after 10 days, unless, for example, like, after 10 days, we had 3 more in that classroom, we might have to for another 10 days, but it's not like we just, put it in place forever and ever. I'd also say right now, in the last, several weeks, we've been tracking this data, really targetedly, well, all year really. We've not gotten, close to a place where we feel like we'd have to do that. We did have a 10% absence rate at Washington at one point due to norovirus, but it came down. Like I said, it's one day it spiked. So I mean, it was high for a day or so, but I don't know, and I don't quote me on that, but I can't confirm that it would be a 3-day rolling average. We would track it that way. But we have that. Again, it'll be very transparent on our dashboard, which pending your approval, we'll make sure we have active on our website so parents can see that. We will also, as transparently as we can, show cases, how many positive cases by campus, but remember by law, we can't say exactly how many are, we just say more than or less than. So it's like less than 5, things like that. You would see that, but we would keep the board very abreast and very attuned to what's going on. And again, I meet with Paige every morning, we go through this data.
So you had said if there was an elementary classroom, so like Washington, for example, if they had a 1st grade classroom where there's 2 positive cases, every parent of a child in that classroom would get a phone call to let them know there's now 2 positive cases in that classroom, correct?
We've been working on that. I don't know if we can, if that violates some sort of rule yet on HIPAA and FERPA, but if we could.
Okay.
Here's a wonderful thing we have. We have, if you recall, we have our customer service team. It's a trained group of 10 across our district that can make phone calls really quickly. Because the other thing I shouldn't want to do is like, oh, hey, Miss Teacher, you have like 20 phone calls tonight. So we would have our customer service team. And if that was possible, we would likely make that phone call to say, hey, just be aware, this is where we're at. We're hoping it doesn't happen. But, one of our big values around here is no surprises. So we're trying to keep people like not be surprised at what's going to happen. So yes, if it's legal, we would try to do that.
Okay, I was going to say if we can, I mean, I think that might help things too, because for example, if that was me, if I got a phone call, I'd be, not only would I be watching my kids more closely to see if they had any symptoms, but I might say, okay, you're just going to wear a mask, it's going around in your classroom. Can you just please put a mask on for the next few days just to protect yourself and others? I'm sure there would be other parents who would do that if that was the case, if we're able to communicate that. So that might in itself just help, even if we don't have to go this route already and say this classroom needs to put masks on. There probably would be some parents who would just choose that at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Or will it keep parents from telling us? I don't,
I was concerned
I worry
about
about that. I do worry about that.
I guess I always try to, and
I
I think
know.
this is something that Mike said, assume the best for people and not assume the worst.
I do too.
I always try to assume the best and that people will communicate and be honest.
I thought about that a lot. I work with our leadership team, and I really do believe, and I'm an optimist, that people are naturally positioned to do the right thing and do the good thing. And in our we would highly encourage people, please just be transparent, open with us. We don't want people to encourage people to do the wrong thing. I really firmly believe this. The people that are doing the right thing are doing the right thing. If they're going to the doctor, they're talking with people, they even suspecting us. Am I worried that we probably have some students that maybe have symptoms that are just coming to school? I worry about that. And we're encouraging, please do the right thing. One thing we're going to encourage, if you have 2 or more symptoms, please, you have a sore throat and headache, please see your doctor, get tested. If you are in a home where somebody has been, please get tested and don't come back and tell, because this is where it just goes like wildfire.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're in trouble. And so we're encouraging people, and if you have one major symptom, which is obviously if you lose taste and smell, you please get tested and let us know.
That just recently happened at somewhere here in town where somebody came and people at home were sick and they ended up with 6 cases.
And the big piece is we don't have the ability to quarantine or order people home. That changes here. We never do anyway. It's public health, but public health are not quarantining people. So I just echo what the governor says. We're just encouraging, please do the right thing, because again, I know you want to be at school, but if you come to school and get our staff and all of a sudden we got to shut down the school for 10 days, that's a sacrifice we have to make. And it's something that we've seen happen in the state.
I think the biggest point that I want to make on that is that, we're doing this because we want to keep the kids in the classroom. I know firsthand last year, my kids struggled with hybrid learning, it's not easy to do learning at home online when you're learning math and science and those kind of things. I appreciate the fact that we're trying to do something where we don't get to a point where public health says, hey, sorry, you're having outbreaks and you're not trying to do anything to help that. So now we need to close and we don't have enough staff. I want to see the kids stay in the classroom, and if it means that a targeted group might have to wear a mask for 10 days at a time, I'm okay with that.
We've also had this as well. If we have an activities outbreak, if that was an issue, we could work around that as well. Because we had our biggest outbreaks last year with both in activities. It's really challenging too, because one of our teams lost a good portion of their season, and was there a chance if we could have done a targeted strategy, kept that season going for the rest of the kids? And so we want to have that option as well. Obviously, we don't have a 5% number varied by each activity, but again, we're looking for ways that we can continue on. Because I agree with you, Missy. It's been a really nice year so far. Knock on wood, we haven't had major illness thus far. We're worried about, there's been some really good things that have happened. It's been relatively like a normal year again, other than, some of the doing tonight. I can't speak for my middle school peeps. It might be a different story for them. Yeah. But consider comparing to last year, what we had to go through. And no, none of us love hybrid learning. That is not something, none of us, love masks. It's not something we want to do. We just, at the end of the day, want to keep our schools open. Reiterate too, we were talking today, we raised test scores in this town by a tremendous amount of time, tremendous amount of percentage this year. And we spent a good portion of the year in hybrid. That's so impressive of our kids and our staff. 91% of our kids show growth in math, 96% of our kids show growth in ELA, in a year where it was a really treacherous. I can't wait to see what our results are going to be when we have a full year of kids in school.
Well, I think it's a very generous plan. I would not mind having it a slightly lower percentage. 7 is nothing, or 8, but I think it's.
Before we make any motions, I just want to ask Mike one more question. So Mike, as we look at using Missy's example of someone in one of her daughter's classes, they get an outbreak and they say, okay, we're going to mask that class for 10 days. Those students are required to wear masks across the district wherever they go, or just in that classroom?
What we've been looking at in the elementary classrooms, if that happens, we would likely go back to strategies. Marcia DeVore and Annette Smith have been working on this. We would, for those 10 days, put them, have their lunch back in the classroom, probably have their own recess, but they would still continue to do the things that they're doing in their activities as well. They still go to specials, everything else would be normal, but we would, in that case, like if we feel like we try to put an outbreak down, probably not have them in lunch or recess. And again, that stinks, but hey, it's still better than not being in school. So that's what we're looking at that as well. The other piece I would say is just being transparent. We have students that have medical excuses, medical orders from doctors to not wear a face covering. We honor those. So if we get those, we just we file those away and make sure that we're aware, our staff's aware of that, and we honor that. And also want to be transparent. If we had a medical order from last year, you don't have to refile that. We already have that on file, so we're still honoring medical excuses from last year as well. If you have questions about that, you can always just call your campus principal and they can walk you through that process and what that is. So yeah, that's we throughout the day, that's what it looked like.
I'd just like to say one more thing about the whole reason that the Iowa was put on a temporary restraining order is to protect people with disabilities who have compromised immune systems. And so I guess a part of me wonders if this is going far enough to protect those students. They're the, you know, the most vulnerable to getting really, really sick from COVID. And I want them to be able to be at school. They're entitled to a free public education, just like everybody else. And in some cases, in some of the emails that we got, you know, it's difficult for parents. When you have, I have a child with a compromised immune system, so I really can empathize with them in that case, you know. It's scary, you know, and I don't mean fearful. It's just scary to think that your child might get sick and you do not know how far it will go and you have no control over that. And so for those parents, I have a lot of empathy for them. And I wonder if it really fulfills this mitigation strategy, really fulfills the temporary restraining orders intent, I guess is what I'm saying. So
I will give you just what our legal counsel
Yeah,
said. As I work with our lawyer from Allergy, they've got many lawyers working on this. There's no solution that we propose that is going to be legally just bulletproof. If you do a mask mandate, you could open yourself to legal litigation, civil liberties, different things as well, because we're seeing that. If you put the mask ban, you know, if you don't do anything, obviously you're opening yourself to litigation on what are we doing for students with disability, the ADA Act, you know, IDEA for students with disabilities. As I worked with our attorney, she said this: you can't do nothing. Sorry, double negative. You have to do something. You have to demonstrate sides that you're listening and you're doing something for your students with disabilities, your students that are saying this is a civil liberties issue. And so that's, she said, you know, in her mind, this was probably as best she could do of trying to honoring both of those. There's nothing we can do that, you know, the bus thing, do we break state law or do we break federal regulation? There was just darn if you do, darn if you don't. And so what we're trying to do here is honor both, to say, you know, if our students with disability, yes, we're hearing that, we're responding to that. Our students that are saying, hey, we feel like this is a parental choice thing and there's been lawsuits about that. We're trying to say, yes, we're trying to honor that as much as possible. And again, use this as very, very limited weapon as necessary if the conditions warrant. So, but I don't disagree with you.
I know,
Sure.
I know. I'm just bringing up
Yeah.
Just so
all
they-
the things
they-
I've been thinking about, everything
Actually,
that we're
I
working
was
on.
joking. Unfortunately, I told Danielle, our lawyer, I said, man, I think I've talked to you more this week. I've talked to my wife. We've had a lot of discussions because we want to make sure everything we did was vetted by our very wise legal counsel.
I have a question for Mike, Superintendent Fisher. If we approve the health mitigation plan as is or as may be changed slightly, why would we need to have a special board meeting to implement masking? Can't, if the mitigation plan is adopted by the board, can't you as superintendent and administrators just enforce it when you reach the criteria?
You know, in talking to our legal counsel, she suggested it's a big deal, and because it's a big deal, it should be in front of a public body, transparent, and it's not just based on my order. We could absolutely do that, but as I talked with Danielle Hainfield, our lawyer, just saying that's probably not the wise thing to do. If we're doing something this is big a deal, and also there's a lot of passion behind this, you know, that know that we're not doing anything under the cover of darkness, that we're being open about it. So we could easily go either way, but the suggestion was to continue to be transparent and have the board looped in on this. But knowing that likely it would be a meeting that we wouldn't be able to do 24-hour notice, this would meet the threshold of an emergency meeting. But at least we'd be able to be communicative with the community on what's going on.
Is that what other districts did? Mason City?
It's all over the place. Des Moines just went with the superintendent. Others are requiring board meetings. It's, you know, everybody did a little bit differently. But I take pride in our board that we're very transparent. You know?
Right, well, and if we were gonna call school off last year or go out of hybrid, we were gonna have a board. I think that's consistent with how we've been.
In the past, right? Yep. Okay. Do we have any other questions for Superintendent Fisher?
I just want to say publicly, this is really hard. This is not why I chose to run for the board, to be able to deal with this kind of stuff. Wasn't even close to what I thought being on the board was all about. So just want to tell you how hard this has been the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever it's been. Seems like about 5. I just want you to know that. I want everyone to know how hard it is. We want to be talking about achievement and learning and academics and being fiscally responsible. This is not what we want to be talking about all the time. And it's pretty scary when you lose a faculty member to a disease. It makes you a little more cautious than you maybe would be otherwise. So I guess I just want to put that on the record as this is hard.
Mhm. I would agree. And I appreciate the fact that we took a pause when this happened and we didn't talk about it that night at our last board meeting. And we waited and we wanted to hear from parents, we wanted to hear from staff. You know, Mike and his team have done a lot of work coming up with the best recommendation that they can for us from, you know, the right sources. And I'm not an expert. I value that and value the hard work that they do to bring us the best recommendation as possible so that we can feel confident that we are doing the thing for our students, because it is hard and it weighs on you having to make these kind of decisions. So
It's important to remember that we're doing this because we care about your kids and we want to make sure they're safe. We want to take our time, keep them in school as long as we possibly can, as much as we possibly can. So,
And I just want to thank the board for giving me the grace. I asked for that. You know, I know it's an emotional situation, and I saw a lot of boards move, I think sometimes really quickly, sometimes recklessly, and luckily we're blessed that our numbers were, you know, a place where we had a little spacing container, and we continue to be. And I want to reiterate too, right now, with our numbers we've had, we wouldn't be close to having to use this matrix, which is a positive thing. We hope that people continue to be wise and make good decisions. We don't have to, but we have a backstop with a safety net if necessary to keep our schools open. And I like that we use our 7 habits language. We're trying to find a win-win. I don't know if it feels like a win-win, might feel more like a compromise, but I really do in the spirit of win-win. You know, we're trying to find something that meets everybody's needs.
any other questions or comments? Any motions from anyone?
I will make a motion to approve the health mitigation plan as proposed and recommended.
For a second. Okay. Guys.
Josh, that motion died, right? Hello?
Hear us, Scott?
Yeah, that motion died, correct?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the health mitigation plan by changing the details section, paragraph 3, section 2, to say rolling 3-day illness absence average is 7% or more.
Can you say that one more time, please?
I move to adopt the proposed health mitigation plan by changing the details section, paragraph 3, subsection 2, to read rolling 3-day illness absence average is 7% or more.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the strategy with a change instead of percent to be at 7% or higher. Any other discussion?
I'm not trying to be a devil's advocate, but I just know the reasoning behind 7%. That's why I asked Mike where they came up with 10%. And I like his response that, you know, he's trying to give us data that's coming from the Health Department, the Iowa Department of Public Health.
Well, my reasoning is that it is the point where you have to report, and I want it before then. And while I think I'm an optimistic person, I have seen that not everybody does what we think they're going to do.
I just wanted to hear.
And Missy, the other thing is, if this is going to come before the board, maybe we don't implement the mask in a special meeting if it's staying at 7% and isn't going up. But the 7% will force us then to have a special board meeting, since the proposal is that only the board would implement the mask. And even then, we wouldn't have to implement a mask mandate in a building or a class or a room or a grade level if we had a board meeting, but we would be then required to have the board meeting to discuss that our numbers are going up. It gives us more flexibility to head it off.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I hadn't thought about that, so thank you.
Any other discussion? Well, then let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
We're gonna roll call this one. Oh, Matt,
Yes.
House,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Freund,
Yes.
Berglund.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you all for, that's very good. Appreciate your help. Let's move on to agenda 8. Communication strategy. Oh, excuse me. We're gonna skip. Oh, communication strategy for health mitigation plan.
All this is just want to be transparent that we're going to continue to roll out the communication on what was just approved, and also that we are going to pull signs just at our campuses to say, face coverings are strongly recommended. Again, we're not mandating it, but we just want to encourage people to do that as well, and give this to be public information. So just that, this action item, I mean, it's an action item, but it's really just kind of to let people know that don't be surprised if you see signs. And we've also ordered quite a few surgical masks that we'll have that people can choose if they want. We'll just be at the door. And again, they're not mandated, but you're welcome to use it. We'll do that at athletic events as well. The indoor athletic events, not the outdoor, but the indoor as well.
Down on Sunday nights.
Yes, we're also going to include we're going to include information about this on our weekly newsletter Sunday nights as well.
I move to publicly post face coverings are strongly recommended at all campus entrances and public communication by the district until further notice.
Second.
To publicly post face coverings are strongly recommended on all campus entrances and at public communication by the district until further notice. Any other discussion? Or say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're going to skip agenda item 9 because we're tabled that one. Agenda item 10, thank you. Measure of academic progress.
So we're really excited to get back to discussing academics. One of the big things, as you've seen, as we move to improve our academics, are actually part of our vision of creating competent is the data. And this data is helping us, measured academic progress are helping us to advance what we're doing, the Iowa assessment or the ISASP and different pieces as well. So we're excited to talk about this. We piloted it at the middle school and now we have it rolled out 3 through 11, but we'll have our staff talk about that. And so we're going to have more data to drive the work that we do in academics.
All right, thanks guys. I'm super excited to talk about this data instead of other data that matters to us. So,
Us too.
this is our real-time achievement data that we've been using for the past 2 years now. So the middle school adopted MAP testing. It is an interim assessment that we use that's much like Iowa. It's kind of a precursor. There's a lot of great literature around like how testing actually improves retention of information and puts things into long-term memory. So just that constant recall and training students to be able to pull stuff from different parts of their brain and bring it up at different times is great. So so we're excited to actually have data that we can use in real time. The difference between this and the Iowa assessment is the Iowa assessment's kind of like, let's just practice and have one game at the end of the year and then see how we did. And then the scoreboard doesn't get posted until 9 months later sometimes. And we're like, oh yeah, great, we did okay, I guess. This one, we get to look at the scoreboard in real time. So as a student gets done taking their math test, and it takes anywhere between 45 minutes and 2 hours, depending on the student and the content area, then the student's score gets projected directly to the teacher, and it breaks it down into different domains. So on math, it breaks it into operations in algebra, number systems, geometry, statistical probability. That's in 8th grade. Each grade level has their own domains. So what we can do is we can even dive down even further into that data to see where kids are doing really great. We've got some awesome staff members. I'm going to give this a lot of credit to Megan Vanderloop, who put this particular spreadsheet together to help organize all of our data so we can see where kids are excelling and where students are kind of falling behind. So targeted interventions. It's like going to the doctor and saying you're unhealthy, but without giving a reason and the exact thing that you need to work on. So we can actually look at different things. So from the top down, our top performer was the RIT score over here, 254. That's really, really well, considering that the known 224. So significantly above grade, all the way down to our some of our special needs students who scored a 185. But what it does is we can then start to strategize on how to move, especially some of these students who we consider to be bubble students, who are 1 or 2 points or 3 points low, that we could have a targeted intervention. And Sheila's going to talk about the targeted interventions that we're doing on specific things. So if we look at this particular student, they scored a 221. They scored a 230 on algebra and operations. We do not need to cover that in a targeted intervention. However, if we go over to here they scored a 210. That's significantly different, and that actually brought that whole score down a lot. Like if this score would have been up here along these, this student would have been. So if I'm developing an intervention in my math classroom or in like a study hall setting when I'm pulling kids and I'm focusing, now I have the real-time data that supports not just how they're doing after they take an assessment in the class, but like retention data that's collected, that's actually normed with across the nation. So this is really great news because we can be responsive to the needs of our students in real time. Even better news now that we're putting it in our, for us at the middle school, we're putting in our lower grades. So then when students come in as a 5th grader, we know exactly where they're performing at the end on day 1, and we can start to move around things and manipulate and plan in order to meet the needs of, for our students. So Sheila's here to talk a little bit about, this is kind of the big view and when the rubber meets the road. And actually we've kind of, Sheila decided, hey, I'm really gonna help teachers take this data and put it into work. And she's been partnering with teachers to get into math classrooms and to show them how to facilitate small groups based on data, amongst other things.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I am kind of a picture person. So I think about a bucket, and our kids are buckets. And sometimes there's just little holes in the bucket. And our kids get the picture that I stink at math. I just stink at math. And this data says, no, you don't. There's this little part, there's this hole in your bucket that we have to help fill, because especially math is so sequential. Let's read that no math. It kind of builds on each other. And if you have that hole over here, the other stuff just keeps falling out. So our goal is to plug the holes. And last year was a tough year. And some kids have more holes than they usually did. And some of the holes we're finding kind of go back a little bit further. Like you're going. Majority of people haven't, you keep going, but this little guy over here kind of still has a hole in multiplication, say. So once I find the area, the domain that they're struggling in, then we do another assessment to pinpoint like number systems. What part of number systems? Is it addition, subtraction, multiplication? And then we target that. And it's so awesome because we have some high students coming over. And so now we're each working with like 3 kids for 10 minutes. That's it. We work on an intervention. At the end of the week, we assess, do we have it? Yep, let's move to the next thing. If we don't have it, we know what we can do. So been really incredible to watch the kids' build relationships with the high school kids. And at first, when I told them and we tested, it was like this. They were so sad. And I'm like, listen, we're doing this because we love you and we want to get you going. And there's just a little spot you need help with. And by day 2, they're like, hey, what time do we come meet with you guys? They were all, it was already now. And so that is so much credit to our high school students who just sat with them, helped them feel comfortable in their skin. Hey, no big deal. Let me help you with the situation. So it's very exciting to see. We did our first, last week was our first big week, and 87% of the kids are ready to go to the next section. And there's 3 or 4 that aren't ready. So we're just going to keep going with that intervention. And so map testing really helps us target that. I'm a dreamer. So of course I had a whole plan for every grade level, every content area. And Joe said, how about if we start with math? So I'm helping with math, but our other teachers in other content areas are using this as well and are already starting to differentiate in the classroom. They couldn't wait to get the data. I would also say we do this in the spring and then we do it again in the fall. So we can also see the lag. So if there were kiddos that were proficient at the end of the year last year and now, dang, we missed them, now they're not again, we can see that one little area isn't as strong as we thought it was.
Yeah, and you can see up here that it's really interesting. Like it talks about like what lag is. This student ended at 232 and then fell to 219. So well above norm, all the way to below proficient. But I'm saying with a little bit of time and energy into math and getting back into math sense, they're going to be right back where they are. But some students, like this guy, 213 to 221. What happened over the summer? Cool. They must have done some work or they took the test a little more serious. But the data is just incredible to look at and it really helped grow with it.
I would say also that we're helping kids see the importance of this. Like this matters. This lets you know, it lets us where you're at, and we want to help you grow. When I was in school, the statement was, oh, don't worry about ITBS. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So if we keep taking it's not a big deal attitude, then that's about how much effort we give something that's not a big deal. And so our kids know, like, here's our goal, here's our target. Even before you take this test, this is what we're shooting for. And we have the opportunity to be in 7th grade doing this, and they're like, look what I got. They can wait to bring their computer over and show us their scores. They want to achieve well. They want to do well.
And then we've
That's
been
fabulous.
trying to create motivation around this too. So we don't publish scores, but we kind of had we created what we call baseball cards last year, where the students we said they were either in training, they were proficient, or what was the other one? Oh no, met their growth. Because we have expected growth for students too, from one test to the other. And then we put everybody up there and they were like, literally, it was, I was just amazed. There was a group of pretty tough who were sitting out there waiting for their buddies' face to come across the screen so then they could high five each other about their performance. And it was just like, whoa, we just created a compelling scoreboard and celebrated student success that is now going to motivate them to take this a little more serious next time. And it's all coming together pretty nicely. You guys have any questions for us?
I have a quick question. One of the things I heard from some parents is as kids transition, and this is a great example, they go from like 7th to 8th grade. You know, how are we making sure that we're tracking that progress so we know when they arrive in that next grade level to make sure that we're not like, okay, now we got to get caught up by the student. And this is a great example of that. So we have essentially documentation that shows how they did last year, where maybe we could help them, and then how they could be more successful the next year.
You got it.
So it's a great program. It's
And
really awesome.
every content area has at least 3 breakdowns.
Like this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course this is math, but reading, writing, and science also have 3 different domains that you can look at to break apart their learning and see where they're struggling most. You know, like if you look at my math score, my geometry would have been horrible as a kid. So thinking about that and reading, writing, math, sometimes it just feels like this big broad shotgun approach. This really lasers in on, this is where we're at. This is what you need most. So we have Math Accelerator, it's called, which once they take this test, it will level them. So they can even do Math Accelerator at home in study hall. And it takes them to the area that they're lowest in, I don't know if that's the right word.
Right. It's hard for us to create authentic interventions for the 254 who's like ready for trigonometry. But this accelerator program puts them exactly where they need to be, so that additional practice time is given on the level that they're performing per their domain.
I would also say the conversations that teachers are having with kids when they look at the scores with them is absolutely lovely. Like, hey, this is where I see you're at. This is the level you're at for this. This is what you're doing here. This is great. What do you think we can do to bring this area where we need to be? And it's just that goal setting and an awareness for the kids. Oh, that's not, you know, they don't, it's also abstract. And it's in a kid's mind, I'm either good or I stink at it. And this breaks it apart, and helps them see the pieces. So I think that's really good.
So it sounds like we're recognizing every kid, no matter where they fall in the spectrum.
Absolutely.
If they're at the top of the class, the bottom of the class, the middle of the class, we're
Doesn't matter.
recognizing their success.
And we celebrate their growth, because growth equals learning. And then we want to really pour into that and say, hey, look, you started at 219, but man, you're at 226. Wow. And the expected growth is only 4, but you grew 7. Like, that's amazing. And just finding those key points to celebrate.
So this might sound kind of silly, but one of the things my son gets when their class achieves something, they all get to wear pajamas to class, and they just love it. They think that's the coolest thing ever. So, I mean, do we have something like that for our middle schools where they can wear hats backwards? Maybe they already can wear that. I don't know.
No, they
But-
can't.
Right, okay. Or they can, where they can say, you know, we've achieved collectively something together. Everybody did it, and now we can do whatever it is that you're like, okay, it's not too far out of bounds and it's
Right.
within reason.
Yeah, no, we're talking, and each teacher kind of incentivizes a little bit. And really we focus on growth when it comes to incentivizing, because we don't want to say like, everybody needs to be proficient. Well, geez, that's a mile away for some kids.
Right.
But we're saying, hey, you know, our expected growth over the year is 4 between these 2 tests. If you grow 2, that's completely doable. Then yeah, they've done things like pizza parties. If we get 75%.
Ice cream bars.
Yeah,
There you
ice
go.
cream bar.
They have all kinds, middle school's food. They like food.
That's the
But
motivator.
sometimes it's like extra recess or, you know, there's all kinds of things that the teachers have
Do they ever
individually done.
say we want to wrestle the teachers or want to play basketball games against the teachers?
You know, I think they've done some basketball games, not wrestling it. It's like, yeah,
And that's one of the celebrations, even though we're not content. I mean, we raised our proficiency scores by quite a bit this year, but we're still not content with them. However, it's not just about proficiency. We had kids that showed 4 years growth in the ISATs. Now, they're still not proficient, right? That's humongous. That's gigantic, and they'll be proficient soon. And so that's where we always have to push. It's not just about proficiency, because like that kid, if it's all proficiency, that kid would be like, why did you have a job? Oh my gosh, no, you grew 4 years in 1 year. That's amazing. And so that's why we have to make sure we celebrate things in multiple ways and know that growth and winning and health aren't just measured just by one metric.
And these aren't point per point also. So realizing if I got one more right on the test, it doesn't take you to a 246. I'm not that math person. We could ask them. I don't know how many questions equal.
Sheila, can you talk about how the test differentiates? based on each skill?
I can. So it's a predictive test. Sorry.
No.
It's a predictive test, which means it'll start every kid out at the same level, and as they get questions right, it levels up. That's why they can say this kid's at a 256 or whatever, because it's really, and then it's in the domains that they're doing great, it'll keep upping the ante. So it's like, I know nothing about trigonometry. You're not supposed to, but it's asking you trick questions because it's trying to figure out exactly where the perfect fit is for you. And if they get it wrong, then it starts to level it down until they start getting right. And then it pushes it back up until it finally levels off and it says, bing, here's where it comes out. So it's about 54 to 57 questions is how it kind of equates, and each kid gets a different set. So it's a pretty cool test.
So we're focusing on their growth overall, more than anything else.
Well,
Growth and
proficiency. So one of our kind of, I don't know, data hacks are each teacher is grabbing like 3 bubble kids from each one of their sections. Bubble kids means they're like really close to proficient, and pouring into those kids to take them from a no to a yes. So then our proficiency rate can go up by 10% this year because we poured into these 15 kids diligently. That's just an easy hack to go from non-proficient to proficient. But then, you know, whole class interventions, growth, the stuff Sheila's doing right now, identifying kids and pulling them in for extra time. And we're always going to focus on growth.
Yeah, it also helps our special education teachers. They are digging into this data big time with their students and seeing where are their kids using their amazing, our special education department's amazing, using lots of resources, but this really helps them find the levels, where to begin and what do we go down to and where are those specific areas they can help them grow in. So it helps a ton with their pull-out instruction as well.
Any other questions from board members? This is a great presentation, really,
Yes.
really exciting.
We're very excited. Our teachers are amazing.
Yeah.
They're really amazing and we have the data. So they just can't wait to get the data. Like, I just need to see their scores so we know where to go next.
This was an area of growth for us in the organization, more data driven, and also, and we'll be hearing about this in our October board meetings. We've established, we talk about metrics and scoreboards and dashboards to know if we're winning and healthy. It's always like, well, is the school district healthy? And how do you know? Well, first of all, you got to set benchmarks for what you expect, and then you have to go find data that would show this. Now, obviously, we look at multiple things. This is really speaking to the competency, student engagement. We have also metrics for health and different things, our cultural different things, leadership. But it's just exciting because I think going back 5 years just wasn't what was really happening. We had some data, but it was very hodgepodge and very scattered. Now, especially going 3 through 12, we have real standardized data in addition to what we're doing with our fast assessment data at the elementaries. So I'm excited about this being at the high school. I'm excited about this being at the at Lincoln, and just really thank middle school because they paved the way. They piloted this. I remember they did this for a couple of years now, and it's been a lot of work to make sure that we can do this in a way that was helpful, useful, and also kind of ease the teachers into this new tool.
I do also want to say something that's super great about the math testing is the accommodations we can make for our students on IEPs. It's just like a push of a button and it can be read to the student if that's a part of their IEP. Whatever those accommodations are very simply made with this test, which is wonderful to get accurate data for our students and what they can and can't do. So that's also sometimes a difficulty with standardized testing, things like that.
We use this data for advanced placement with students, or right now the departments are putting together interventions during their SS multi-tiered systems of support. So looking at, hey, the math department, they get first choice, so they're going to pull these 15 kids on this data in order to give them extra math during their study hall. And then we'll kind of rotate through and look at target students. But without this data, that'd be very difficult to determine. You would be basically using your assessments that you have in class, but then it's already kind of, perhaps it's
So it's good to have 3 data points.
Yep.
And we have a what's going to happen SAS long before we take this data,
Oh,
so we know, and we're making those interventions. It's not just the hope method of we teach really hard all year and hope the ISAS goes well. And we don't have the evidence to prove this yet. We're going to do some studies on this, and there's some correlation studies you can do on this. But the eye test appears that the MAP test may actually be harder, more rigorous than the ISAS, which that's good. You want the practice to be harder than the actual game, so to speak. So if we're doing well on this, we know that the ISAS is going to be more of a chip shot for us too. So we're preparing our students more rigorously than even some of the state assessments that we're taking.
Just a real quick attestment to that is students were in math, 8th grade math, about 34% proficient. About 34% of our students were proficient on the MAP test. When this same group of students, when they took the IO assessment, was like 51% in math. So it's a really good correlation. Like Mike said, it's a little bit harder to be proficient on this one. So it really means something when you are, and it's setting us up very nicely to be able to go get it this spring.
I would agree with Joe, practicing, not teaching to a test at all, but practicing taking a test like this builds your skills at taking a test like the ISAS and the ACT and the SAT and all of those test taking things. The book he is referring to is called Make It Stick. Every day a chance to read it. It's not very long, but it talks a lot about the importance of testing and what it does to the brain, helps the brain learn. So anyway.
Joe actually recommended that book to this group last 4 years.
Make it stick.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't know you
no,
already
it's
knew.
great. It's really good to have reinforcement as well. That's great. So,
It's a great book.
Good book.
yeah, it's a good book. All right. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Great.
listening.
All right.
Thank you.
I've been asked to take a 5-minute break, so we're going to break for 5 minutes. So it's 19:35. So we'll come back at
Thanks, Sheila.
1940. So take 5 minutes.
Thank you.
7:40.
Thank you, Ms. Jerry.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Thanks,
Thank
Jerry.
you, Cheryl.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Joe.
Okay, and we're back. Off for that 5-minute break. Let's move on to item number 11. HVAC. I think we have somebody here who you all know and all really enjoy his corner. He's going to come talk to us about HVAC.
It says HVAC, but we're here to talk roofs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
We're here to talk roofs. So
maybe that's
Oh, yeah.
an acronym for roofs that we are not familiar
it
with.
could be, and I don't even know that one. I'm actually a little disappointed. He's here for me,
They all
so I'm sort of disappointed.
Well, I think they were.
I must be- Okay, good, thank you. I'm actually maybe a little boring or something. Anyway,
Yeah, they were
what I'm here for tonight is to talk to you a little bit about the roofs at North Grand on the east end that still are part of the building. As many know, when you go in there, the roofs are in very, very rough shape. We planned on Pebble taking $50,000 a year, which this was the first year, and each year over the next 5 years, put $150,000 set aside to roofs, tuck pointing, and the HVAC for that end of the building. We have actually a way to go ahead and get the roofs done sooner, and we have some money available. We can do that and do the entire east end all at one time. So how we have that is some COVID money paid for some Pebble that were already budgeted to do. So with those savings and the $150,000 that we have already set aside, we would be able to do the whole east end at one time. And the roof that we're talking about putting on that can be put on over the winter. So we feel we're going to probably get our best bids that we're going to get if we do it in the near future. So, but the price that it's going to cost, and we're estimating anywhere from $325 to $375. We'll have to get an architect engineer to get the bids together because we'll have to have the whole sealed bid. And anything over 139, you have to have an engineer architect involved with it. So that's what sort of talking about. We have really 3 sections of roof that go on the east end. Section A, which is the biggest section, is over the pool, wrestling room and gym. Area B is over everything on the north side up to the band room. So it include the old art room, the shop, and chorus. And then section C is the band room. Then on around the corner, there's a room that has some air handlers in it. So that's the smallest section, is section C. So because that's what we're here to talk about and ask for permission to go out and get some bids and see what we come back on. So really what we're here for is just to get permission to go out and get an architect engineer lined up and then go ahead and get some bid proposals together and get some bids in and see if we meet budget.
I make a motion to approve Director of Operations Jerry Mitchell to seek bids to replace roofing at the North Grand building.
Second.
The motion is second to approve Director of Operations Jerry Mitchell to seek bids to replace roofing at the North Grand building. Any other discussion?
I just had a quick question. You do bids for this type of roof? Are there local companies who do that kind of work? Or
No,
not really?
yeah,
Okay.
probably
I just was
the
curious.
closest is Waterloo and
Okay.
Mason City and Clear Lake would be the closest.
Okay.
It's a real specialty work. There used to be a firm that was in town years ago, but they haven't done any probably for at least 15, 20 years now. So
Josh, just for point of clarification, with some of the federal COVID money we received, we were able to reallocate that money to some of the things that were in these budget areas that Jerry's talking about. And so we've got some flexibility now to move forward with this roofing faster than we had originally planned. And by doing so, if we can get it done either late winter, early spring, early summer, by moving ahead a full year of projection, we'll be assisting TLC in their renovations and moving in to make sure that the envelope and the roof is tight. And we'll be assisting our own students who are using the wrestling room and the gym and whatnot. So by moving forward with this sooner than we originally thought, it's a win-win for everybody.
And also just one other thing, the 150,000 that we're planning on over the next 5 years, towards the end of that, put back in other projects on facilities.
Any other questions, point of orders, discussions? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Sign. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
You guys
Thank you.
have a great evening.
See ya. On to agenda item number 12, subpay. And this, I think Superintendent. Fisher.
Yeah, so we, and Evan will assist on this, we've known pre-COVID, we actually started a task force to talk about deal with sub shortages. The substitute teacher shortage is something that's perpetual. And then COVID hit and that task force never really got any traction just because obviously COVID hit so busy last year. And then this summer we had started to do some work on it and to get back on track with it. Unfortunately, it's a time consuming process. We had to do a bunch of pay studies nationally, locally, regionally, statewide. And then we also then convened a task force of teachers and substitute teachers. And they've made recommendations to us on how we can make it a better situation for our substitute teachers, including some training, some more practice steps on getting subs signed up. And that none of that takes. We've actually got that in place already. The biggest piece was we wanted to look at some financial incentive. One, we found out that our sub pay was actually in the lower half of the area. We want to make sure that that doesn't continue to happen. We build in some safeguards to make sure that we continue to make the pay, competitive. And number two, looking at some bonuses, different things that could possibly improve retention and different things. Evan, he could talk about what he researched. Our philosophy was on our pay, we wanted to be north of,
Yeah, so when I was doing my pay studies, I took a state average, a national average, regional average, and a district average, put them all together to find out our area, the lowest up pay was 105, Charles City was at 10, and the highest at 130. When I took all the averages together, that just stayed out to about 120. So with that being said, we want to be north of fair. We want to keep people in Charles for today. On top of that 125 today, if I go back 3 years when $10 rate. If we would have the negotiated rate with the teachers, we would have been 20 and on par for average. On top of that $125 per day, I'd like to also propose an annual automatic increase based on the teacher pay raise set in negotiations every year to keep on par, so we don't have to keep coming back every 3 years and renegotiating the sub pay. On top of that, though, we are short subs. So I did a study to see what one of the schools I asked about this. We come up with an innovative retention bonus. So for every 30 days, a substitute works in the district non-consecutive, they would receive a cash bonus of $500. Our goal is hopefully to recruit and get more subs in district to fill our classrooms, take less work off our teachers. That being said, I would propose $125 per day to go back to the beginning of the school year, backdate all the subs who have worked. And with the 30 days, after speaking with the lawyer to start, if approved tomorrow, the days start counting towards said bonus. So with that, I'll take any questions.
What's our pool of subs right now? How many? Josh left.
I think it depends on any given day and what class, and it just seems like we have people call in. It's tough, I think.
Yeah, our pool is shrunk. So the substitute teachers is a very narrow window. Oftentimes you have retired teachers. That's our greatest pool, but with COVID, I've had several tell us like, I'm not coming back until I feel like COVID's safer, booster shots are out. Then also we try to hire younger folks, but the great younger folks get snatched up and get jobs. And then you have this very narrow window of some people that just, based on their life condition or where they're at, they like to sub every day. And we have a few of those, that are able to do that. Maybe their spouse has a good job and they just kind of do this for extra cash. We have some all do it on the side as one of like maybe 3 gigs. So that's a piece too, where I was talking with one of our subs that, he does a lot of handyman work too. It's like, well, I could go make more money being a handyman. I'm like, well, I think we could, sweeten the pot for them too. So, and he actually sat on our sub task force. So this was directly from them of what they were saying. So we're excited that hopefully this can, we said 2 things: widen the pool, get more people, but then deepen the pool, get more out of the people that we have. Because we have some subs that are working 2 days a week. Well, if they know they're getting $500 cash bonus every 30 days, I mean, they could conceivably make $1,500, $2,000 of additional money throughout the year.
And there are no other benefits associated with being a substitute teacher, right? They're not eligible for any sort of benefits that we offer,
No,
403B, anything like that.
no, nothing.
They're just working for.
They're just working for the cash. We try to give some other benefits. We have like cool bags we give them sometimes. We're also trying to, this is something they do at Washington. They give them 75 cents to go to the pop machine. Little things like that, which that's how public money would do that out of our own personal pockets. But that's a little perk that they do. One thing we got asked to do was, and we're going to do this in October, is to offer a sub training day and pay them. So on our PD day in October, we're going to line up a day where subs, they don't have to, can come in and go through a day of training to learn about technology, classroom management, take a tour of the buildings. And that was feedback we got. We'll start doing that in the fall of the teacher work days too, that we're doing that. So it was really great being with several subs. We did a long list of we did this exercise where we brainstormed everything we could think of to improve this. And then we did what's called a risk opportunity matrix. And then you find out what's like the highest opportunity, lowest risk, and what's also like the low opportunity, highest risk. There are some things that are foolish that you don't want to do. And the things that we're recommending all came out of this matrix is bold, low risk, really high reward strategies we can do.
What kind of certification do these subs have to have?
If you want to be a long-term sub, for more than 7 days in one classroom, you have to have a teaching degree with an active license, an active teaching license or sub license. But on the other hand, for less than 7 days, you can, anybody has a bachelor's can get it. Their sub license.
A bachelor's degree?
Yeah, bachelor's degree, yes.
Because it used to be, if you let your teaching certificate expire, you probably shouldn't take this up. That's not true anymore, is it?
And I've got to recheck some of these. Some of this changed during COVID. Some of the rules got a little more relaxed. Something we're able to do now. We actually are allowed in some instances to allow paraeducators only a 2-year degree to actually do some subbing. And we're actually looking at another thing that doesn't take board approval. What we're looking at is actually offering a sub authorization course in our district that can that maybe our paraeducators can take. Now that's another issue because then we'll be short paraeducators to pull people, but we have to pick. Sometimes it's where the need is. One of the dilemmas we're running into, so I don't know that this will be the last thing that we'll bring to the board, but there's a couple things we have to look at money-wise. One is some of our paraeducators actually make more money being a para than they would as a sub, even with the new sub rate. So we've got to address that just because we pay pretty competitively for paras. I asked one, I said, at 125, will we still, you'd be even or maybe below what I make our para rate. Now, what I will tell you is when our paras do sub, we pay them at the higher rate. That's the fair thing to do. But we'd also like to give them incentive of like, there's more responsibility, more work. Another thing we heard about is that there are some districts that are actually paying their long-term sub retired teachers at their outgoing per diem rate. So what you retired at would be actually, because right now our sub rate long-term base salary, which I think is like 175 a day, but you had some teachers making quite a bit more than that. And so I've heard some districts have been doing that. However, for us to do something like that is going to take more pay studies with Evan. I'm proud to say everything we're recommending to you tonight, we've found ways in the general fund budget to pay for it to make it cost neutral. So we found some other margins to do that. So other recommendations down the road we'd have to find how to fund them.
So for a long-term sub, how many days do we have to work before they go on that schedule?
Gosh, Evan, you know what that is it 10? Yeah,
So
same, she
2
knows.
weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks, and then you kick up from the higher rate to the 175 a day.
I just want to say, in my experience of subbing, I have never been in a classroom where I did not have great sub plans and great support. So, I mean, I just want to say that.
That's important.
I've mostly subbed at the middle school and high school.
That's
You know,
important for the teachers to know that if they're going to expect a sub to come in, they need to have their ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Right.
That
If it's planned.
was 2 recommendations that came out from the sub task force. And I want to echo what Pat says. 90% of the time that's true. There were some pockets where it wasn't, and that was a concern for some of the sub teachers. So our administration has been tasked with holding people accountable, having sub plans established and what they are, and be very clear that expectation. Another expectation we put into place is that if we know that you have a proactive absence, like vacation or a college visit for your child or an appointment that you know about, we want that absence to be put into the system a week in advance. And now we're asking our teachers, expecting them, we actually have a full list of substitute teachers in our district. We're asking them to email or call a few of them to say, hey, would you be willing to take this? What we were seeing at times was somebody might put an absence like the night before. Now, obviously, sick kids, illness, emergency happened, we get that. But I will tell you, there's times that Trisha Ballman is in our office at 6 a.m. She's trying to line up a sub for somebody that knew they were going to be gone like 2 weeks ago. And then we hear this, oh gosh, I would have loved to come, but I already lined up X. And so we're also use our 7 habits, trying to be more proactive with our staff and raise some expectations there too.
I'd like to jump back real quick on something Pat said. It's 10 consecutive days
Right.
in a row to go to the higher grade. It's not
Yes.
just you work 10 days and then you're eligible
Right.
for the second.
And
So
it has to be for the same teacher.
I think it's gotta be the same classroom, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So you really
I-
you're taking over that. class.
It's really, it's really our maternity leave, our surgery leaves,
Same.
long-term. Most of it where we have that stuff, maternity, but this is a good problem. We have lots of people having babies, which is awesome, but it has been a sub shortage issue.
Well, I think it's great that we are also holding them accountable. I can't imagine giving even, I feel like a week is even pretty nice, that they only have to give a week to let you know that they're gonna be on vacation, but I absolutely think that that should be expected of them. So, yeah.
And we had widespread support of that, because honestly, if somebody's not proactive and they don't get a sub, it's the peer teachers that have to kind of eat the load of like spending classes or giving up the prep times. So again, I want to thank our sub task force, had teachers on it, had substitutes on it. We had several senior leaders that have been big advocates for that. Our principals have been big advocates. And I want to thank also Director Dyke. Director Dyke has brought this up as a perpetual thing that we needed to resolve. And it took us a little bit longer than we wanted to, but we are now happy. Scott has brought this up as a concern in committee, and we have some recommendations to you that we feel strongly about.
Hey, Scott. Scott?
Yeah, the thing though that I want to double check here is with the increase in the 125 per day, Evan, you're looking at going back and making up the difference for people who have already subbed this I don't want to say it, this school year, right?
That's correct. So for the middle school and high school, we go back to August 23rd, and for the elementaries, we go back to August 25th.
Retroactive.
Retroactive.
So the 125 days is retro. And then I know Evan's using bonus. I kind of like the word incentive because it is an incentive to put in 30 days of substituting, and then you get this cash incentive of 500. But that time period is starting tomorrow for that 30 days to count, based upon recommendations from legal counsel and saying that we need to give people an advance notice that is what we're planning on doing. Is that accurate, Evan?
Correct. After getting advised by legal counsel, they recommended bringing it to the public and then starting after that. So I'm taking and sticking with.
Okay, so based upon that, I move to approve the substitute teacher task force proposal as presented.
A motion and a second to approve the substitute teacher task force proposal as presented. Any other discussion?
I will just say one, pending your approval, which is not that we're close, we will have an aggressive marketing campaign on our social media. We might even run some paper to say, hey, that was a piece too. We didn't want to do some marketing, but when we found out we were like the second lowest in the area on sub pay, that's not something you want to go and like, hey, come sub here. It's gonna have something we can brag about. And now we have things that we can brag about, which is cool bonus and different things. And on top of the other things we're going to be, so we'll be working with our communications office to get some aggressive social media things out as well.
And again, the other thing is that this doesn't have to come back to the board for a while potentially, because what we're doing is setting an automatic increase based upon the percentage that negotiations for teachers go. So if the professional staff gets a 2 or a 3% increase, then so will the subs. So, sometime in the future, it may need to be looked at, but not for a few years. And I'm very pleased with that option.
Well, then let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, all those opposed, same sign. Is on to agenda item number 13. Budget Review Committee Special Education Supplement.
Yeah, so every year, as part of certifying my annual report, I have to submit the special education supplement report to the Department of Education. So with that being said, I'm allowed to request allowable growth, which increases our spending authority, which allows us to run a special education deficit to the school budget review committee, approved by the board. So the deficit decreased by $271,029.87 from last year, when the deficit was $573,000, $573,542.42. This year, the deficit totals $302,512.55. What this will be paid for upon your guys' approval and going to the SBRC is this comes out of our cash reserve levy, where we have plenty of money to cover that expense.
So this is for the fiscal year 21, which we ended June 30th.
Correct, for
So-
fiscal year 20 and 21 that I had to close out by September 15th.
And so this is for now, this money for fiscal year 22, current year.
So this will be for the 2021 year to offset that deficit, so I don't have to take it out of our own general fund.
Great, excellent. So it's kind of, the state's going to backfill that.
Yep.
Yep, excellent. Okay.
And I just want to thank Evan. He's done a remarkable job in his first few months on the job. First of all, we've decreased the special ed deficit, which was huge. We've increased our general fund reserves by nearly $500,000, so we're very financially healthy. And on top of that, we've actually found some things that we could recode to special ed. So we've actually added some special ed coding, but it's actually brought the deficit down. But with that, we found a nearly $100,000 savings that actually was able to offset the cost of the kindergarten teachers. So made that cost neutral, has offset the cost. That'll help fund the new substitute improvements as well. So we carved money out in the budget with that. And we also are using it to help fund some, we've been short on custodial and maintenance staff. So we're able to add some more custodial maintenance hours. And we're able to do all that cost neutral by some of the things we've done. So we're seeing more services to kids, and we're seeing our deficit go down, and we're seeing our reserves go up. So I just want to thank Evan. He's done that in his first few months in the job. So thank you, sir.
Way to go. That's awesome.
We're doing a great job of holding our rates flat and doing more with less. We're doing more as much as we can with effective use of our money.
What we have.
Yeah, excellent work.
I
Okay.
move to request a supplemental state aid in the amount of $302,512.55 for the fiscal year 2021 negative special education balance.
We have a motion and a second to request supplemental state aid in the amount of $302,512.55 for the fiscal year 2021 negative special education balance. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 14, the SIAC committee. So this was some great work. We've got some great people on that committee this year.
Yeah, I want to thank our principals, thank Paige especially. We want to ask some, good people to be a part of this, so we're excited about it. So just for your information, our members for the SIAC committee for this year.
Hey, Missy, you served on that for years.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I would like, I could continue to be a part of the committee as a parent. I don't know if that can be added, but
We would love for you to.
I would like to continue on that committee if possible, once I've moved forward. So,
Okay.
yeah, but yeah, Scott and I were the current board members that were a part of SIAC, so.
Great.
It's a deal. You can stay on
Okay, I know.
forever.
And if you're short community members, you can add me in as well for the future.
Yeah. We have a motion.
I move to approve the SIAC committee as presented plus Missy
And Scott.
and Scott.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the SIAC committee members as presented plus Ms. Scott. All those in, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 15, the consideration of the consent agenda. We have a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda items as listed below.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items as listed below. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to agenda item number 16, big ideas. Yeah, fantastic.
The biggest idea was all the work that Mike and everybody else did with our mitigation strategies.
I think it's important to talk about. Last year was really tough on kids. We had a really hard last year, and we saw both in our students. That's a huge, huge improvement. Lots of districts were losing numbers. We grew in numbers, and we grew in growth for our students. It's fantastic. We're doing a really good job with our resources, spending our money wisely, and was doing a great job of helping us manage it. So thank you. Thanks.
We didn't have to talk about COVID for a while.
Yeah, getting back to the COVID plans, though, I think it's a testament to how people came tonight because of the way it was rolled out.
We did a nice job of giving everybody an opportunity to talk about their thoughts,
Didn't
share their
say so, get
opinions.
it off their chest if they needed to, and
It's one thing I've always appreciated about our district is the fact that we are transparent and we want to hear from the parents and, you know,
have a dialogue.
and not just the parents, but the students and the staff. And yeah, we want to hear from them because they're important. So.
I appreciate, we had, I think, 21 emails sent to us, once we opened the feedback loop, and I had one person, see me directly. So, I feel like people hopefully have their voices heard. I really shout out to Mason City Community Schools after they went last week on Monday, and we've been working on a plan similar to this. We called and talked and collaborated with them, and they gave us so much advice on, hey, here's something we learned, here's something new I do differently. So really want to thank Mason City. They did a similar strategy to what we're doing. They learned a lot from their travels on how to do that, and also to, we're able to get some expertise even from their health department too. So we've just been very thankful for, it's been truly collaborative, and we're just thankful for the grace of the community. We continue to ask our community just because it's a really challenging season still with everything that's going on. It seems to be a kindness sometimes is a short supply. So grace and kindness is something I continue to ask our family to embrace.
Get your new notebook.
Yeah, you need a new notebook and a new computer.
Yeah, let's see, 4 years, same computer.
I scheduled actually to get it replaced here last week, but then this whole face covering thing got popped up and my wife's been a little busy on that. But maybe next week I'll have a new computer. So
I think April got one for you. Good time, yeah. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 17, important upcoming dates. Public communications and public relations meeting at 7 a.m. on this Friday. And then this Friday is also homecoming, which is an exciting time. And then our next board meeting is October the 11th here in the high school library. All right, so let's move on to agenda item number 18.
Can I ask
Yeah,
a
absolutely,
question? Are we still going to offer the committee meetings as Zoom, or are we going back to in-person on those?
that would be the prerogative of the board president. So
Yeah, we can continue with the Zoom meetings. I think they're really effective. There's a way for us to do it.
It's easier for me, yeah.
Yeah, I think
absolutely,
it's evident
yeah.
for
We're
everybody.
throwing
Yeah.
only a couple of us anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
and we can get the same material that we normally would, and the
Right.
public can always attend if they want to.
And the public can always attend because we always have a physical location. We
Yeah.
always have, Evan and I are on Zoom at the central services, so they're happy to come and just sit with me on the computer as well. But absolutely, since we do them so early in the morning as well.
Appreciate that.
I did clarify.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm going to chime in with Missy and say, yes, keep the committee meetings via Zoom or telephone. 7 a.m. is brutal for people who aren't morning people.
We hear you.
We got it. Thank you.
Duly noted.
Mike and I may be the only two morning people.
By when the
Yes, I
committee
know.
meetings, I've been a couple hours, but Missy's been, it worked like 6 hours.
Working out.
All right. Item number 18, adjourn for a closed session per Iowa Code 21.5.1A. So I think we need a motion and a roll call vote for this one. Is that right?
I move to adjourn to closed session as per Iowa Code 21.5.1A. Do I have to talk about it?
Do we need that? Yeah, I think so. Yes.
To review or discuss records which are required or authorized by or federal law to be kept confidential or to be kept confidential as a condition for that governmental body's possession or receipt of federal funds.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to join the board per Iowa Code Section 225.1A to discuss or review required or authorized by state or federal law to be kept confidential or to be kept confidential as a condition for that governmental body's possession or continued receipt of federal funds. So that we're going to review a confidential IT security assessment report. So do a roll call vote for this. Any other discussion? Let's do a roll call vote for this one, please.
Mac,
Yes.
Rittenhouse,
Yes.
Freud, Knight,
Yes.
Went.
Yes.
Motion passes. So let's take 5 minutes and we'll give April an opportunity to get set up and then we'll do a quick IT.
Are we just staying here?
Or, yeah. So you need to stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, fill up your Alaska water bottle, whatever it's gonna take. Keep you in your seat.
I got it. Yeah, I'm gonna wait till-